Morning everyone, this is Alistair here. We're going to nip out and do our favourite morning run over to Fisherford via Blackford and right round and then back into the last leg of the road from Middleton of Blackford into Rothienorman. So let's get going. See you later. Morning. So we're steadily climbing up the first slight hill coming out of Rothienorman towards Blackford. It's a dry and reasonably clear autumnal morning, and relatively low wind, slight breeze you might hear in the microphone, but in general a perfect day for getting out on the bike. So we're nearing the top of the hill. So the bike we're riding today is a electric power assist bike, so you've still got to pedal and do all the work. It's 9 gears, and as we get to the top of the hill, start of the descent, we're going into the 9th gear, and when the power's on full we can get about 52 miles, medium about 70 odd, and eco is 108. So we're freewheeling down the hill, nice gentle run. In general, this particular route, the road surface is pretty good. It's predominantly single track or unclassified. Very quiet. We shouldn't see an awful lot of traffic on it. Possibly later on, as the children make their way to school, and we'll see some of the school buses, and we'll see some of the commuter traffic probably heading into Inverurie and Aberdeen respectively. So back down on the flat now, and as you can see, we've got a field of stunted oats to our left. When I was a boy, the oats would be up past the height of your waist on stalks that were about 3 feet, and nowadays of course they only grow the stalks to about a foot, and all the goodness goes into the head to improve the yield. And some of the other fields there have all been harvested with the bales already brought in. Bales are starting to come in now as they've cooled down, because during the period where they were actually harvested, the weather was extremely hot, well, in relative terms to Scotland I would say, which made the bales, which normally heat up when they're packed, made them just a bit too hot to bring inside for fear of spontaneous combustion or potential fire. So Heading down a little hill here towards the mills. Crossing another little bridge, of which Aberdeenshire has 1,300. Now a lot of these little steadings and mills have ponds from bygone days when these little streams and burns supplied them with water, and they created ponds to break the water into smaller streams for them to allow the water to go over a wheel. But they've all gone now. But all of these steadings and mills have all been converted into some very nice houses. So heading along, fine plantation. You can see the round berries really coming out now and showing their colours as we head towards the autumn. Very slight tint appearing on the leaves as we head more to what the Americans call the fall. So a few lumpy bits of road here. A lot of these roads are very old. It would have been built hundreds of years ago as connecting tracks between various farmsteads and hamlets and villages. That's when the population, the rural population, was far greater than it is now. You know, because you could have up to 10 people living and working on a farm, whereas nowadays it's 1 or 2. A bigger farm might have 4. So those of us that live in the countryside, most of us don't have a great deal to do with agriculture, but probably in our histories. So climbing up the hill at Middleton or Blackford. This is Middleton or Blackford Farm. This is the farm that's owned by the Cormac family. They originally came from Rothienorman farm, where I live now, and they have settled here and got a few goats, and the sheep are out in the fields, and the grain has all been sent to the granaries. Some interesting looking native sheep. I think they're Shetland style sheep, soys. I'm not an expert, so I stand to be corrected. So we're heading along this nice long straight bit towards the Blackford switch, and you can see the pylons congregated round about the switch. This switch was built just, or completed last year, and is really needed for bringing in the electricity from the offshore wind farms, which are expanding at a good rate of knots, and hopefully will provide Scotland with much needed energy in a sustainable way and in a clean way for many years to come. So there'll be further developments up here where they put in a capacitor which will help us stabilise the electricity that runs up and down the grid, and then further on they're going to build big battery pack units where we can store some electricity so that we can kind of even out the supply and demand, you know, particularly over the peak periods where demand is at its highest, and again provide some sustainability for the future. Scotland has a great future when it comes to energy, because we have some of the world's highest ambient wind speeds with nice linear wind, which is essential for the turbines to maintain a long lifespan. Getting good clean straight air going through the blades causes less damage to the blades. So you can see behind that mound these batters there is the switch, and then of course they've wilded all the landscape to make it less sore on the eyes. But as the years go on and the trees get higher, the switch itself will become less apparent. We have a few of these. We've, I think, 3 of these switches in Aberdeenshire, so it shows you how strategic Aberdeenshire is in regard to energy. Not only do we have huge infrastructure with oil and gas, we have the gas at St Fergus, and we have these national grid infrastructures. So Aberdeenshire is strategically very important for not only Scotland's energy, but for the energy of the UK. And you can see on the horizon wind turbines on all the various farmlands and hills, all churning out electricity. So particularly this time of the day, where you're browning off your toast and boiling up your kettle for a cup of tea. And we'll get that sorted when we get back. So I'm going to go heading down towards Fisher Ford on this road. This road has been designated as the roadway for the Blackford Switch. It's the main route. It's been upgraded to be able to sustain the heavy loads brought in by some of the lorries up to 100 tons. And this is Overhill Farm. Very typical farm with the road going pretty much going right through it. And you'll see more of these as we go around the route. Quite reasonably that farms were right on the roadside to improve the communications. So this small bridge was probably built 100 years ago and underwent some close inspections prior to the development of the Blackford Switch, and lo and behold, it was perfectly capable of carrying the huge loads that were coming in to provide the materials for the construction. And you can see this part of the road has been slightly widened because of the bends in it, and the bit through the bridge there, they use these fancy articulated trucks that steer from the rear as well as the front to be able to wriggle it round the corner. So just further up here, the corner has been quite widened to reduce the amount of torsion on the tyres as it steers its way around the corner. So the surface is absolutely fantastic for cycling on, and it's relatively flat, so there's no big hills for these trucks to be able to pull up. And this road eventually connects onto the A920, the Colpy Road as it's commonly known, and the hill that you see in front of us with a couple of turbines on it is Tilly Morgan. And as we get into Fisherford, I'll point out where the Tilly Morgan church and graveyard, the graveyard's still there but the church is gone. It fell, it was taken down just before Storm Arwen because it was structurally in a poor condition. Now this wall is a beautifully constructed wall. The lady that lives here built it out of the local stone. I think it's one of the finest example of modern dry stone diking. Very pleasing to the eye. could possibly be there well after the house is gone. Such is the strength and of the integrity of these types of constructions. So another long straight. Again we see the steadings and farmhouses on the side of the road. This is a slightly better than single track road. It's a B road, I can't remember the number of it, towards Fisher Ford. Could be the B944. Stand to be corrected on that. So you can see right along here all the fields have been harvested, and very shortly the ploughs will be out ploughing it and re-sowing it for the crops for next year. And I think this year's harvest has been relatively pain-free from the point of view that it's been dry, exceedingly dry. You can see the ground still very dry, and of course this dryness has affected the yields, but not to a huge extent I wouldn't say, albeit I'm no expert. So we're gently cruising along here around about 13 miles an hour, and you know, good bit of work output. So we're seeing a little bit of traffic, so heading towards 7:45, which isn't unexpected. This farm is Socky Loan, and during Storm Arwen, the back end of this tatty store got blown in. You can see the new wall where it's been reconstructed. You can see some of the rubble from the old wall, and it's hopefully going to be all built up and ready for this year's tatty harvest. And then we have a field full of tatties ready to lift, and that's got Hermes label on it, telling us that these drills have Hermes tatties in them. So this part of Scotland we grow a lot of potatoes, and it's usually very high quality for the retail trade, and in some instances some of them will be seed. Unfortunately, because of our leaving Europe via Brexit, the seed potato market has suffered badly, because we're not able to export some of our top class seed potatoes into Europe, and that's caused our local farmers no end of strife. But let's not get into politics this morning. So as we're just on the lower half of the hill at Rothienorman, you can see the sign for Auchterless is 6 miles and Kilsalmon's 2. So, and then the bit straight on goes up to Greystone Farm. So nice gentle drop down into Fisher Ford. So the speed is increasing, so we'll usually hit into Fisher Ford at about 20 miles an hour. Just gently increasing the speed as the hill takes us down into the village. It's okay folks, I won't exceed the speed limit. So we approach the very edge of this village here on the left is where the Rothienorman church used to be. You can see a little bit of the stonework, and then in behind the hedge there is the Commonwealth war graves, memorials to the First World War and to some of the local worthies that have been buried there. So as we head up the hill, we'll drop a couple of gears, and This is a very small, quiet village. Probably about 30 or 40 souls living here now. The school has closed over the last year or so because of the drop in numbers. We don't have any children attending it, or the children that were attending it were so few that it wasn't really in their best interest to continue maintaining it. So the school is technically now mothballed, and I have to say the future isn't bright because we don't have any children going to it. An empty play park with children's toys in it. It's sad in some ways, but not a lot we can do about that. You've really got to have children in sufficient numbers to make a school viable, and not only in numbers but in social terms for the children to thrive. So again, we can see the field here partially harvested, and within the next few days that will all be baled up. And then over there on the right, nice big package of logs ready for the winter fire. This used to be the Fjord Inn, sorry, and the owners have retired and been unsuccessful in finding somebody to actually continue running the restaurant, which was a notable restaurant, had very good write-up. Morning. So we're continuing on. It's quite likely that we'll find the bus on the way to pick up the children who are, there we go, and they're off to Meldrum Academy. So the road's still pretty level, but as you see just ahead of us, it's a nice gentle hill which will take us a couple of 3 gears down from the top where we are at the moment, and once we get to the top there, it will be relatively straightforward run back across to Blackford in it's almost like a big wide circle. So the route today, we're travelling about 8 miles, and here we go, drop a couple of gears. Now, big thing with these electric bikes is that if you keep the pedal rate good and constant, you get better life out your battery. It doesn't strain, it doesn't suck up the power just quite as hard, because you're still banging in the horsepower from your own legs. So you can see we're steadily climbing up this hill, nearly 9 miles an hour, really pushing in the energy into the pedals, and the motor is multiplying that effort to help me up the hill, because old guys like me who are over 70 with stents in their heart need a wee help, and it keeps us fit, it keeps the blood pumping, keeps it from clotting, and generally keeps us in good humour. So over there to my right, you can see the back end of the switch that we talked about earlier. It covers about 8 hectares, so it's a big old construction, but it has to handle huge amounts of energy, and so the units all need to be spaced out to prevent any kind of arcing. Now just ahead of me you can see some fallen trees. That's the result of our one, and they'll probably end up as firewood as folks get around to cutting them up into usable logs. So we're quite clearly seeing the effects of climate change up here in Aberdeenshire. Probably we lost well over 1 million trees, I would say, probably more, no, certainly not less. And we'll get around to replacing all of them shortly. Quite a number of programs on the go at the moment for tree planting, and that involves a lot of community work as well. So we're heading down a very slight hill towards more farmsteading. Nice and steady. So we're running about 25 miles an hour. Nice gentle bend here. The bike just gently works its way around and past the west east mains of Red Hill. And then here we go through North Red Hill Farmstead, and this is relatively modern. Some of the buildings have been added on to the existing steadings that were there before. And then we have some cattle sheds that will be full of cattle as the winter goes. There's a field full of sheep. So absolutely perfect morning for a gentle ride out the bike. And we've got some bales there that have been wrapped, and that will provide a haylage, which is a wholesome foodstuff, particularly for cattle over the winter. And you see over there in the distance the masts and radio broadcast masts. Then dead ahead of us there's 5 wood turbines on up at Darley. So gentle bit on the flat here, and then there'll be a slight descent, and then we'll go back up onto the Blackford Road. So this particular run is one of my favourites because it's not particularly taxing. There's no huge hills, so you don't get overly lathered over it. But it's one of these runs that you've got a good constant cardio exercise going on, your heart's working, and there's sufficient flat and to allow you to put some power into your pedals. And then there's these ups and downs just to give you a variation of the route. And I have to say the scenery and the views absolutely phenomenal. Probably the views we can see, probably up to 26-27 miles. We'll run down the hill. Continue on this road, it would take us to up the left. We're going to take the right junction here, and that will take us back to Blackford. So that's a couple of miles to Blackford, and then another couple of miles back to Rothienorman. So no need to drop a gear for this gentle hill, because we'll just punch some more power down into the legs, down into the pedals, keeping the toes nice and ball of your foot on the pedal so that you maximise the input. So we're gently powering up the hill at 12-13 miles an hour. Hill of Tilly Morgan there in the onto the right, and you can just see the tip of Benahee poking up behind the hill of Scares, I think that is, can't remember. I'm sure we could look at the map, but you can see Benahee's quite prominent and is a very, very good reference point wherever you are in this part of Aberdeenshire, and it's fairly well known as the main landmark for this part of Aberdeenshire. Geary, the area of Geary. So in most parts of Geary and for Martin you'll see Benahee. So we're having a gentle run down. The bike's picking up its own speed with very little effort from me. And if we trolley down the hill, we can take a rest and just let the bike do the work. So this bike run, you can quite often see whole families coming out on their bike, the youngsters being trained how to manage the road. Gives them an opportunity to get out on the road where it's relatively quiet and most of all safe. I have to say that I do quite a lot of biking on the main roads as well, and I'm finding that drivers now, if you're properly kitted out with nice bright clothing like I am, usually give you a fairly wide berth. Very rarely are you getting somebody who's just a wee bit close. I think people are beginning to cotton on that, you know, you give cyclists a wide berth, not only to make it obvious they're there, but also it stops the wind draft giving them a wobble as you fly past them. And so we're gently coming down this hill towards some very nice little steadings that have horses. And horses are out this morning, so you can see there's some very fine animals. So we're just freewheeling down this hill about 25 miles an hour, and horses all gently relaxed there. Again, all these steadings have mill ponds and small streams running through them, which would have been and may still be in the future a source of energy, because more and more people are liking the idea of putting small turbines into these mill ponds and using the sluices to produce energy. Not huge amounts of energy, but something would certainly charge a battery, and would conserve and sustain some sort of energy, which, you know, would be useful in a wide variety of ways. Because I think as we, you know, go towards more and more LED lighting and induction heating and these sorts of things, the consumption energy is much more efficient because it takes the heat where it's actually needed. So here we have in front of us Middleton of Blackford Farm, which earlier when we came up the hill we turned right towards the switch, but we're going to go straight ahead now, and this is the single leg back to Rothienorman. So again, it's a nice gentle run down the hill through the farmsteading, and we can see the school bus getting ready to pick up the children to go to school. That's probably Rothienorman, or take them to Rothienorman to get this big school bus to Melbourne. Gentle run round the corner here. I have to watch this corner someday. There's a lot of gravel on it, and if you get into the gravel it can make your steering very iffy. So I always try and take my time coming down here because it's just a bit lumpy, as you can see from the shuggling to the camera. So we're back down onto the straight bit, going along the oak plantation, and just a nice gentle run. Obviously the pump's running now, so some of these wells will be getting pretty dry because this summer's been quite poor when it comes to rainfall. We've had several weeks where the rainfall is practically nil, and we'll need the winter to bring the water table back up to its normal height, so that all these wells can keep themselves clean and supply the clean water for all the homesteads run about here. So, as I say, the beautiful show of rowan berries, some elderberries as well, and the roadsides will be brambles, rosehip. So no doubt when we go to some of the social coffee mornings, we'll be seeing all kinds of jam being dished out. I was given a jar of plum jam a couple of days ago, and so quite looking forward to making a plum jam roly-poly, and lots of thin creamy custard. We're fortunate around here that we're able to have delivered to our door locally produced milk that's unhomogenized. Now, unhomogenized milk means that you have that very thick dollop of cream. If you leave the bottle standing, it floats to the top and pretty much coagulates the neck of the bottle, and sometimes it's so thick you've actually got to break that cream through to get the milk to pour. But the taste is absolutely fantastic. So first bit of traffic today, be very quiet. So this bit of the road's going slightly downhill, so picking along here at 15-16 miles an hour with very little effort. So you can see ahead of us the first hill we came down out of Rothienorman. I'm going to go up at this time, we'll drop a couple of gears and probably finish up at the top, down about the 5th gear, and then we'll be able to take up to the 7th gear as we drive through the village. I like to keep it about the middle of the gear range, so that when you start off on a fresh journey, a new journey, you're not in too high a gear. So you can see the verges have been manicured, just to give the steadings roundabout that clean and kept look. Lots of families, a lot of traditionally built bits of construction there, and then of the pony farm here, and then some of the wind turbines not actually running this morning because there's virtually no wind. Here, absolutely peaceful. We've got the place to ourselves. So there you are, folks. That's just coming near the end of the 8-mile run. Bit of exercise, and it would be a kind of ideal run just to maintain your fitness, but also probably as a warm-up. Say for example if you are going to go cycling into Inverurie or cycling up to Turriff later on in the day. Hasn't used very much energy out the battery, so a recharge to give you a top up, it's only going to take a couple of hours, if that. So gently cruising down into Rothienorman, heading to the junction of the B9001, click it up a couple of gears, and then that'll be us ready to go for home. And morning. There we are now, nice and steady run down the hill. Bus there didn't signal till the last minute. Mind you, could have anticipated that's where it was going. Morning, Irene. Very well. Aye. Oh, I've been here, I've not gone anywhere. So there we are, back to the garage, and I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to your company on another run on another day. Good cycling, folks. See you later. Bye now.